Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our February 16th, 2021 work session. First, we have a discussion with Horizon Goodwill regarding CDBG CV funds. Thanks for joining us today, Brooke and Dave.
Thanks for having us, Mayor and Council. Jordy Newman is with us too, because part of that application was collaborative. So in case there were any questions that were specific to the portion of the program that the CAC will be participating in, we wanted to have him be here. So I guess I'll ask where you guys would like to start. I did submit prior to today's meeting some responses in regards to both programs and some examples of other communities who have used CARES funds to manage or stand up similar projects. So I don't know if you guys want me to go through each of those, or if you've had an opportunity to read through them and you want to ask questions based upon that, I'll take your direction there.
Okay. Do you guys have any specific questions about either of the programs, or do you just want to have them do a high-level overview? Okay. Can you maybe just do like a quick high-level overview of the programs?
I'm sorry, you guys, I didn't hear that. It got garbled.
Nobody can hear you.
Can you just do maybe a quick high-level overview of both the programs?
Sure. So the Whole Family Learning Party. So the reason that we were suggesting such an endeavor was really to address those families that have seen a loss of income through the pandemic, who are also then being challenged with having to spend time at home for distance learning, right? So a lot of that is females that are in our workforce. You guys might have seen the report that came out from the local Chamber of Commerce about a week ago that female participation in our workforce is at an all-time low since the 1970s, largely related to the impact the pandemic is having on the household. So what we created was an opportunity, one, to bring both school age and preschool age youth in the afternoons and address any gaps that they might be having in learning, right? Are they having trouble with their homework? Is there a particular subject that they're getting stuck on, and have access not only to an instructor that would be a state certified teacher, but also to education students who are pursuing their bachelor's degree from Shepherd University, who have, one, a desire to teach, but two, and also a need for experiential learning there, right? And then on the other side, allowing the parents, both female and male, but I suspect will be largely female head of households, the opportunity to start to invest in their own development, learning, reskilling and upskilling to get them back into the workforce and working and bringing income into the household. And so the challenges that they face often of other programs that don't offer the opportunity for some place for their child to be is they don't have childcare, so they can't go, so they're not accessing. So this was an opportunity to bring the whole family in and really focus on learning from kind of both angles, but at the same time. Also having then a meal that we were able to purchase locally that would focus on healthy eating in the evening, also modeling what it means to sit down as a family and have dinner together, talk about what you're learning while you're in your learning party, and truly focus on getting the family back on track post-pandemic. So while this type of consolidated service doesn't exist now, it does in different kind of bubbles around the community right now. And the reason that the CAC, Goodwill, On Track, Shepherd all came together was we saw an opportunity to leverage what we're all doing to serve that group as a whole. And again, be pathing them back towards earned income so that they're not having to rely on relief funds or crisis funds to stay in their homes, to maintain their utilities, that type of thing. So that's the 30,000-foot view of the project.
Hey, Brooke, are there any other programs like this in the county at all?
There are not in the county, Shelley. In the larger cities in the state, and Jordy can probably speak exactly to, there are other counties that are standing up 2Gen. You guys might have heard of it as 2Gen instead of whole family before, which has actually been the approach that the Washington County DSS has been tasked with too, but I'll let Jordy speak to that a little bit as well.
Yes, Shelley. Actually, the National Community Action Partnership has encouraged and almost mandated all the community action agencies to take the whole family approach. So the idea is that we want to address situations before they become a barrier for the family that leads to eviction or to a utility termination. So by providing these services not only to the parents but to the kids, we're able to address the family as a whole, and they kind of work as a team to address their particular situations that are causing hardships. And this is something the Community Action Council is doing. We're starting this with our families that are in our homeless shelter. They're going to meet with staff, kind of do an evaluation of their current situation, what we can do to assist them, and then what services we don't provide, we're going to refer them to Head Start or to Goodwill for workforce development. The idea is to utilize all the different services that agencies offer without one agency having to try and undertake everything, which just simply isn't feasible. So that's why we partnered on this grant, and we're in full support of it. This is something Governor Hogan has put in his supplemental budget for the past 3 years for community action agencies to be able to research whole family and their community and how to best implement it. And that's what we're rolling out now. So we're completely in support of this grant application, and it's definitely going to be the future of how social services are administered in the city of Hagerstown as well as Washington County.
Thank you.
So I appreciate getting the additional information, particularly the information that we did not get in our summarized packet. I don't think that it reads a lot differently. It does not change my mind on or position on the matter, but I guess when I look at this program budget, CDBG, and I think about the purpose of the funds to assist with impacts from COVID and largely economically related, the proposal is that you're going to hire an individual at $55,000, provide a new meal program at $15,000, and some ancillary items for operations of your organization for a total of about $85,000. And I have to weigh that, frankly, against the fact that our utilities, for example, water and sewer utilities, we're sitting here with about $1 million in arrears and payments of folks that haven't been able to make utility payments because of actual impacts. And I just look at this funding, and I look at those types of needs that have been generated in terms of folks, being able to pay basic things like utilities, and instead of putting the money toward that, we're basically being asked to approve putting it toward a new program. And I guess I hear what you're saying, and in fact, I think, Jordy, you summarize pretty squarely the same thing that Joe Jefferson said in his letter of support is, my hope is that this document will help to solidify the funding needed to get this program up and running, as our community surely can benefit from it. And I hear that, and I'm not saying I don't support that. I hear what you're saying. I hear that the governor's saying, hey, this is something we should do. But I have to weigh that against, the purpose of these sort of one-time funds and being able to use them to provide relief for individuals sort of already impacted by those monetary-oriented obligations.
Well, Kristen, just a point of clarification, we're not allowed to use city CDBG funding for public utilities. So we couldn't use that money to assist city residents with their bill. Now, there is a new grant coming out from the state, ERAP, which is bringing about $253 million in. We most likely will be able to use those funds, and we are working on securing those at this time. We probably won't see that money before April.
Right, and
But
as
Hagerstown definitely will get a large sum.
just like to piggyback what Jordy said, that part of the purpose of a project like this is to bring earned income into the household. So those households moving forward, once the ERAP and other funds that are eligible to be used for those services are exhausted, that they have the means to continue to pay their utilities, to continue to pay their rent, continue to sustain their household. So in this particular application, these funds are not eligible for that type of payment anyway.
And I don't want to like hone in on just that one single item. I guess I want to hone in on the broader statement that, and I've said in the past, it seems like the hardest thing for government to do is give away money once it's given to them. It just seems that way to me. It's always seemed that way. If I had my druthers, there's 640 plus nonprofits across this county. I'd rather just say thank you for the money, state, and dole out about $5,000 a piece to each one, because they know their needs much more than I do, needs that have occurred over the last year. And for me, I guess I see it in that manner more so than I see I'm going to be asked to take, roughly $85,000 and start something new that it appears the funding otherwise just doesn't exist right now to start up. And I just can't agree that that's the purpose of what this funding was being provided for, is something new and entirely different and an expansion of programs, any more than I believe that there isn't the ability within the existing system right now that provides some components, of the various objectives that are delineated here.
I have a question. I mean, listen, I understand this. I truly believe that there have been a lot of people who have been negatively affected because of COVID. After this round of funding from our CDBG funds, I mean, does it just go away after that, or is this going to be a continual request of our CDBG funds from here on out?
It would actually not be a continued request, Councilman Brucci, of CDBG funds, but actually a request then to, and Jordy can speak a little more to this as well. If you remember, he just shared that the community action agencies at large are being challenged to do this work, and would allow us now to show a kind of a pilot into the success that we've had to then apply for state funding that would not come through the city council or even Office of Economic Development at all to sustain the program long term.
MCAP is actually administering a grant on behalf of the state for every community action agency across the state that is interested in participating in 2Gen. It's in the governor's supplemental budget again this year. I anticipate we'll get $50,000 again this upcoming fiscal year for the program. And really the upfront cost is just getting things established and how this is all going to flow. And then after that, it'll be almost self-sufficient, but that's where we'll reach out to foundations that have particular interest in working with kids or with financial literacy to provide the funding for this program.
I see the need for the program, and I think it's a really great program. I think that my struggle a little bit is the one-time hire. I mean, the $55,000 as a salary. And just wondering, would that be somebody that's already working for Goodwill or CAC, or is this a new person, or how would that work? If it's to be, or is it a group of people that will be working? Like, how would that work?
So it's actually to secure a full-time certified teacher, Councilwoman Martinez. And so I did some just recon of some teachers that are not working right now that I knew of what would be reasonable for them, because in addition to just being available in the evening, right, their role is going to be developing curriculum for the kids in the evening, making sure that not only is there the support during, kind of after school learning, but that there's also age appropriate learning activities that can happen, whether it's, I don't know, building a volcano or doing financial literacy for the group or that kind of thing. So they're really going to become kind of a full-time instructor and teacher for those youth. In addition, they're going to provide the oversight to the education students that are, this is something that I think kind of gets a little bit lost in this is also an experiential learning and a training ground for future teachers in our community to engage with that at-risk youth that they might not get to see in a traditional school setting too. So they're also going to be providing the leadership and guidance for the student teachers that we'll have. So it'll be a full-time job, even though the class hours, if you will, are in the evening. That person is going to have to build curriculum. They're going to be managing students. They're going to be provide students in the traditional sense, and then students in the post-secondary sense, and providing that leadership and experiential guidance to them as well. So to answer your question, they do not work here yet. No, that was like I said, a compilation of conversation, because to provide that leadership to student teachers, we do have to have a certified teacher on staff to do so.
Do you guys have any other questions for them?
I mean, I know that we're comparing like starting this new program to what, we've seen happening at the county level with that grant opportunity. And this is a little bit different than a new startup business, a for-profit. I mean, this is still a need in the community. So I definitely understand what Kristen is saying, that it's a little bit uneasy. I think that if there's a possibility to definitely really focus in on the financial literacy component of this, because if there are individuals that are having trouble and struggling to pay their bills, that it's not just a food, and talking about the meals, but it's like how to manage that budget. Jordy, you and I have talked about that opportunity. I think that there's definitely still something there that, to incorporate.
Absolutely, and that's part of this whole family approach. Is it's meant to be self-sustaining, and it's going to be something the families not only learn now, but they're going to continue to use in the future.
And there's opportunity too to engage, again, the children in the household, even in that financial education component, right? We have financial literacy games and programs that are tailored to younger people, so that when the family is having those conversations, it can also be a whole family conversation. It's not just mom or dad or grandma or grandpa stressed and not able to communicate with their kids about, being fiscally responsible, why maybe we can't go out to dinner tonight and we need to eat at home because of how that impacts our family budget. That's part of the support something like this offers too.
Or buying groceries from a grocery store.
Sorry.
This is insane.
Better reduce, Bruce. Hey, real quick. So, I heard you say about, the startup. This is basically to help fund this endeavor at its inception, and that you wouldn't be coming back looking at additional CDBG funds in the future for this program. But I see this number of 85,260, and I look at this, and everything's a reoccurring cost. It's so through MCAT, will you be able to continue to fund this, Jordy, do you think?
We've consistently received $50,000 a year from MCAP for whole family, and that's through the CSBG grant, which they're also looking at distributing the discretionary funding for CSBG differently. So we are anticipating another $20,000 a year that we could get from CSBG to assist with this program.
And then for our portion of that, there's other workforce dollars that come into the state, into the community that we would be able to apply for to offset any gap in funding. So just for everybody, kind of gee whiz, as part of when we initiated this conversation, myself, Jordy, and others, was how would we fund this going forward that would not include asking CDBG or the city for funding in the future, but really how can we leverage this funding that exists to meet a need that is emerging and growing now. And that would also give us some opportunity to provide data to MCAP and others when we're seeking funding in the future of what we've been able to do to date.
So are you guys okay with the request, or
Okay, with what?
are you guys okay with their request?
No, I'm not. I mean, I think I've been pretty clear. I mean, I don't, just with all of the other stuff that we have to sit in these seats and hear about over the last 12 months, it's hard for me to look at something new and say, yeah, we should, devote this limited resource. And I get it. It's not ours. We're not gonna be asked to do it after. It's not our money to begin with, but it's so odd that you get sort of this funding handed down, and you sit here and you continue to read and hear about all of the stuff, that's already this drug, and you say, okay, well, to address that, we're going to do something totally different with it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind.
Well, I'm in favor, and I'm putting my faith in you guys moving forward with this endeavor to seek out additional grants and things like that to continue this project forward into the future for our residents. So you have my support on this initial ask. So.
And I'm also in favor. I would like to definitely see if there's any kind of outreach to our senior citizens, if we can include them in some way. I think that although it is a new program, I think that it is something that is needed, especially with the financial literacy, because one of the things that is difficult in a pandemic is how to figure out what to do with the money that you don't have. So congratulations for being creative. I know that it's a need, so you have my support.
I'm in favor as well. I think that, I struggle a little bit with the 55,000. And I just struggle there. I do a lot of work with people in the front lines, working with children and elderly during this time, and they're not making nowhere near close to that. And to be doing so much work that is so impactful to our community and children, and to not have it. And I know that is a majority of people that work in nonprofit and with children. They're constantly struggling in order to be able to show up and be on time for their frontline work. So I do think that it needs to be something that is sustainable for someone to go in that position, absolutely. But at the same time, I would like for us as a city to figure out how we can level that out so that you don't have people at a community center, executive director making less than 30,000, and then someone else doing, different hours making 50,000. And that's kind of where I struggle, but I am in support of the program.
Councilmember Burnett.
I'm in support of the program, but I'm still sticker shock, especially with the $55,000 salary and the overall percentage of the funds that will go to this program. It's a really great program, but I'm still struggling with the dollar amount, to be honest. Just because we know of other organizations that are struggling, and there are people who are still hungry, and just to offer this amount of money is really unsettling for me. So I guess I'm like 50-50. I don't know. It's a really great program, but the dollar amount is really high.
I think personally, I'd like to see more families be able to be impacted with a less amount, and maybe some collaboration between organizations for support with the teacher. But it's just my opinion. I'm struggling with it majorly.
And we have to approve the request today.
I-
On the agenda for next week.
Next week.
Yeah, we're just giving it the nod to be voted on next week.
Okay, I'm in favor of voting on it, since I am 50-50 at this moment.
Okay. Well, before they go, do you guys have any other further questions for them, since we have them here now? All right.
Got one for Jonathan. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
What do we have left out of this CARES funding then, that we haven't allocated?
Sure, and I have some scenarios that we could discuss, and it would, obviously was dependent upon the goodwill requests, and how the city council felt about the full funding amounts for goodwill. If everybody's original request that came to the city for this round of CDBG CV funding was fulfilled, we'd have $84,938 left. During last week's discussion, we did reach out to the other agencies that had applied to see if they would be willing to possibly take on additional funding, or if they would modify their requests. And they did submit some additional numbers where they would in essence take their original requests up to a maximum amount. So they have submitted additional requests that would potentially, along with goodwill funding, that would put us at a negative of about 21,000. So obviously that wouldn't work. So it all depends, Councilman Brucci, on, I believe, where the city council would want to go with, one, the goodwill funding and the goodwill programs. If they're both funded, that would then lead to the question on, do we want to fund the original agency's application requests, or do we want to stick with everybody's original requests and then possibly resubmit an application round for that additional 84,000 that's out there?
We're gonna talk about that at a future work session.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think we have a future.
So just a quick clarification on that $55,000 too, for everybody. I don't know if it was clear. That's a contract position, so that includes benefits, everything. There's no additional fringe or monies going into that position. And so just want to put that out there. And again, because of the partnership with the college, we are required to have someone that holds that teaching certificate in that position to provide that guidance to students. So a little different than some of the other youth worker positions, not all, but some that are out there that Councilwoman Martinez was mentioning.
So Scott, if there's those additional options that we need to discuss prior to next week, do we need to have a regular session prior to the voting session?
We have a work session before the regular session, if that's what you'd like to do.
Is that what you guys would like to do?
I would.
To discuss the applications and the additional applications?
Right.
I know you wouldn't, but,
He wouldn't, yeah, he doesn't.
I mean, I think that's what we'll need to do, if you guys are good
Well, what are
with
you
that.
gonna get out of a work session
What,
on this issue? I mean,
With
the
the
additional
additional funding.
applications? Because we're set to vote on it next week.
well, we're set to vote on this next week.
Yeah, the
And
second
it
allocation.
still leaves us a
is
balance of
CDBG.
84,938 after everything is funded in the initial round. Correct, Jonathan?
Yes, again, it would all depend on, the direction we'd received last week was to reach out to those agencies that had.
Right, and you did that, and that request came in, and it's 21,000 more than what we actually have.
Yes,
to-
so-
to
so
give
we could-
away.
Right, so we have to have that conversation before we vote on it, because next week is approval for funding requests for the second allocation of these funds. So wouldn't we,
As it was presented.
okay,
I mean, I hear the number 21 over, and I hear 84 to the good. There are two requests that were provided from Horizon Goodwill. Does that mean that the second request that was discussed is or is not included
Funding
in the
both.
84 and the 21?
Yeah, and it's funding
I just
both.
heard us have a conversation about the first one. I did not hear us have a conversation about the second one.
About the 58.5.
Correct.
Right. I was just actually getting ready to ask that. Do these go hand in hand, or can one be, like, can one go without the other? Is
I'm so confused.
one, I don't know.
They were submitted as separate projects, so we are prepared to do one or the other or both. You know, I think some of the questions you have, I know we're way over our time too, so I apologize to the people that are waiting to talk after us, but.
This is
some of the
important, we're giving
question
away federal money here,
Can-
yeah.
Can we
Right,
just,
some of the question I heard last week was, one around, Councilwoman Martinez addressed, engaging the people that are being served in the hotels, and certainly they are part of the population that we would target. We have 17 adults and 13 minors currently housed in hotels, and we have about another 18 people that walk up here from various, non-stable living situations to our building every day for breakfast. So we chose our building as a centralized location, not to say, and I obviously didn't say that clearly, that it was not possible for us to deliver those meals, but it was. And then the other concern that I heard was really around the cost of meals comparative to meals that are offered to others in the community. And so while a non-prepared meal can often be provided at a lower cost because someone has a kitchen to cook it in, we're really targeting, again, people that are living in hotels that are on the street that do not have a location to prepare meals. And so I did do a little just research in terms of the kind of national reported general cost of like a Meals on Wheels, which this would be comparable to, and that's between $6 and $7 a meal. So we're at $6.50. So that price point, and that's $6.50 including soup to nuts, everything made, delivered, case management staff available to meet with those that are accessing the meals and provide ancillary services to them and pass them where they may need to be for the rest of the day. We've seen other projects where communities are spending $150,000 of this same fund to purchase restaurant vouchers in their city centers, where people who are in need of meals are then provided vouchers and coming into the city center to eat. We just proposed a different kind of logistics of how to do that. So I did provide some more information there for you guys, but those are the big questions I heard. I don't know if that answers those or not.
can we just split the difference? I mean, I understand and I appreciate the clarification, because I will tell you, when I read last week, and I think that Councilman Martinez read the same thing, where it says at 200 Prospect, I assumed it was all there and that was a stationary. I also understand the argument of, folks not being able to prepare it in the morning, so I appreciate both of those clarifications. I would just say to sort of split the difference and be done with the funding. I think as Bob was trying to allude to, if we're 21 over and this is 58, could you do it at 38 for now? We exhaust all the funding, everybody gets what they want, and then move on. Just a suggestion.
We certainly can, if that's where the council decides to go. It'll just shorten the length of period of time we're able to offer that resource. Our goal was to offer it April through December. Cutting $20,000 off will likely mean that the project ends September, October-ish.
Are you guys agreeable to that?
I think that it's a good compromise.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm in for that.
I agree with that.
And Mayor, if I could let everyone know, it was in a memo that was included with the preliminary agenda packet, the cutting the difference of the Goodwill funding request, as Councilman Alshire suggested, to take that 58,000 down to roughly 38,000. The other applicants that had submitted an additional maximum amount of their requests, that would result in the YMCA childcare funding for low to moderate income city residents being at 40,000, the community free clinic at 50,000, and the Washington County Commission on Aging at 62,448.
Yep,
Sounds
that's
good.
what we
I like
want.
that.
Yep,
That's what we want.
yep,
That sounds good.
perfect.
Yep,
All right.
that
Excellent.
works.
That makes
Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we don't need a work session.
Yep,
Yeah, there you go. You got
there you go.
you got your wish.
Up next, we have the discussion with the Atlantic League Professional Baseball, Senator Paul Quarterman, Blackie Bowen, and Frank Bolton. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity to be in front of you. Unfortunately, Mr. Bowen had a personal commitment, did not allow him to be here today. We are joined with Mr. Frank Bolton, founder and CEO of the Atlantic League Professional Baseball, that you guys all met last month. Last month, we received the exciting announcement that Hagerstown has been granted conditional approval by the Atlantic League.
Yeah, you need to turn that up a little bit in here,
I
please.
can't.
Senator, hold on one
Yeah,
second,
yeah.
please.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
I thought it was just me.
Sorry, I did too.
I can
No, I was just getting ready to
I'm like
text
right
Eric. Say, hey, you need to turn that up a little
I got it
bit.
right in my ear, it's like right here.
You can hear,
I
right?
can hear the whole thing. I was like, what's the matter,
Why
guys?
don't you go sit over there then?
That's mean. That's not very nice. Don't say that.
Okay, can you,
Speak.
testing 1, 2, 3?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
better,
Mark?
guys?
A little
Better.
feedback.
Feedback.
A little
Yeah,
bit of
there's
feedback.
feedback.
Yeah. Wrong
A
way.
lot of feedback.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
much better.
Yeah,
that
good.
better?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. As I was saying, Mr. Bowen had a personal commitment today that did not allow him to be here. We are joined Mr. Frank Bolton, founder and CEO of the Land League of Professional Baseball, which you guys met last month. Last month, we received an exciting announcement. Hagerstown will be granted conditional approval by the Land League of Professional Baseball to award a team membership in Hagerstown. As you guys are all aware, the Stadium Authority, Maryland Stadium Authority, in conjunction with their contracted consultants, are currently in the process of completing their Phase 2 facility pre-design. As you're also aware, at the beginning of this Phase 2 analysis, a non-disclosure agreement was signed on the city's behalf by the city administrator, Scott Nicewarner, and the city engineer, Ronnie Tissue. Since that time, a lot has changed. Potential investor and owner, the team, the league have all changed. Not knowing what or how the design standards have differed, or what is or is not needed between this entity and what was the previous entity. I'm asking that you would allow the Atlantic League and the local investor, Howard Bowen, to enter into a non-disclosure to have the ability to view and give input. So we know this is within their standards, their business plan, and the investment that they are willing to make in the city of Hagerstown. For the better part of the last 10 years, the previous ownership has tried to move the previous team out of Hagerstown, tried to move to Winchester, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, Virginia. And now, we have an established local business leader who wants to help make this a reality. Again, I can't stress enough of, the things that have changed from when we started this process, the better part of probably a year ago, to where we are now as far as the different players that are involved. And as such, I think it's important that we allow the Atlantic League and Mr. Bowen the ability to be involved. So again, that we can make sure that the standards are deemed appropriate for their commitment and investment they're willing to make in the city of Hagerstown. So turn it back to you, Madam Mayor, to see how you want to take it from there. But the request is pretty simple.
Okay. Well, do you guys have any questions for Senator Quarterman or Mr. Bolton?
I don't. I think my first question is, I don't really know that I fully understand as clearly as I should what's being asked.
What's being asked, again, is for Mr. Bowen and Mr. Bolton to enter into a non-disclosure so they would have the ability to work with the consultants of the Maryland Stadium Authority to make sure and deem that what is being done is appropriate to what their investment would be that they're willing to make in Hagerstown. I think the last thing anyone, would want, regardless of how you feel about this project, is you would never want the finished product to come out and not match up with what the needs are for what would be the entity to be involved in.
I'm okay with that happening with both Mr. Bowen and Mr. Bolton to have, an NDA. I think it's a wonderful thing, we could have an expert and someone that loves our community that's willing to take a look at this. I mean, I don't know what I'm looking at, so I think it's better, and they're willing to invest, and it seems like it's a good idea to me.
Imagine trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle. Now, put together a very complicated model without instructions to do so and just fly by the seat of your pants. I mean, I believe that the ability for these entities to be able to look at all the information, and the bottom line might be that it's not a feasible project. Nobody knows yet. But we don't know that. They don't know that. No one knows that at this point. Since it is a private project by private people on a piece of property in an area that's zoned correctly for it, I believe they should be able to have all access to all the information that they need to make an educated decision on whether or not it's a feasible project. Yeah, pretty simple.
So, I mean, you're using the term private
I am,
pretty often,
I am.
even though there's a state ask for this community.
There was a state ask for North Point development.
Okay, I'll let you talk. For 60 million public dollars, right? I mean, if we're honest, the 60 million public dollars are being asked for a private entity to partner with the state on a public-private partnership project. And the only reason the city, in my mind, remains in the NDA is the parameters of that relationship were going to be different than, and if the phase 2 study would have been out, you know, in the period that we had all anticipated, would have been the case, which is why we had to move so expeditiously on it. You know, the public would see it at this point. And the impression that I get is this report is all but done. And I have no problem with Mr. Bolton and Mr. Bowen seeing that document any more than I have any issue with the public seeing that document at the same time. I guess I have some curiosity of why we wouldn't simply release the study and then everybody gets to look at it, and Mr. Bolton, Mr. Bowen get to look at it and say, hey, you know, is this going to work for us or isn't it? No differently than our public at large would get to see it, and then we wouldn't have to worry about these NDAs and you know, keeping these documents secret. And for me, and I told the senator this when we talked on the phone, and I'm going to say it again. You know, there was a few weeks ago when we had a meeting, and we were asked not to you know, have that meeting in a public session. And like it or not, I'm aware folks left that meeting and had conversations with parties outside of that meeting. And during the course of this deliberation, it seems to me that the message to the city and the county, and I appreciate the message, is look, we're trying to get this done, just don't say anything negative until we get it done, okay? And I appreciate that message. I appreciate the effort. But at the same time, you know, we sit in this seat and we've heard dialogue regarding sort of, you know, the city's not involved, the city won't be involved, but we bring up things like property tax and business personal property tax and the A&E district and A&A tax. We just had a discussion the other week about stormwater fees and there's water and sewer connections and, you know, off-site improvements such as drainage and utilities and traffic and parking. There's talk about, you know, at this table of, you know, what's going to happen to the cultural trail and how will it be impacted, and things like building a parking deck and charging fees. And so it'd be great to look at this in a vacuum and say, well, it's only this one study for this one entity that's going to look at it this one way in some private manner. But we know that's not the case, that the city has some vested interest in involvement in that deliberation process, whether we want to or not. And we don't know the particulars of that any more than the county and the Board of County Commissioners that are going to have some vested interest in the deliberations of that process. And so for me, it seems odd that if the report is that close to completion and the interest remains in the expeditious fashion of conclusion that it does, that we wouldn't simply ensure that the city and the county and the public, frankly, represented that would be impacted, would have equal opportunity for view of that documentation.
Mr. Bolton, this is not the first time that you've ever built had something like this, a stadium. So is there any benefit or for you to see it before the public, or I mean, is it commonplace to release everything and everybody sees it all at once, like Councilman Alshire is saying?
Well, it's always different, you know, it's always going to be different from city to city, ballpark to ballpark. But I'll hold this up. I just did this for the state of Rhode Island. They asked me to price out some things like improvements to their McCoy Stadium. So they asked me about lights and seats and scoreboards, because I've been doing this for 30 years and I've been involved in 12. So it saves you a step or two. I mean, it's more work for me. I'm volunteering my time. Why am I doing that? Because Blackie Bowen was the best man at my wedding, and he's my dear friend, and he loves Hagerstown, and I'm trying to help him. You know, there's no, I mean, for me to help out here that's exactly what I'm doing. So, you know, I don't think the public is going to have the same kind of look on this as I am going to, and maybe I can sharpen everybody's pencil a little bit by taking a look at this. Whether you want me to or not, that's totally up to you guys. But I'm here, I'm volunteering, and I'd like to help Hagerstown and Mr. Bowen on this effort.
Thank you. Jill, just real quick for you. During the North Point discussions of a year and a half, there were NDAs signed, correctly? Correct. Okay. And those NDAs, along with that, there were private executive session meetings held, correctly? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, that was a private project that had state assistance in funding, correct?
Yes, there was state assistance for
Okay.
roadway improvement.
I see absolutely no difference between North Point and this project. And the citizens found out about North Point when everything was said and done, correct? Yeah. Okay. See, I see absolutely no difference. None whatsoever. I see a private project in an area that is zoned correctly, that is looking to the state for assistance in helping to create this project. I see the city of Hagerstown being involved, as we were at North Point, because we own Basil Boulevard, and we had umpteen hundred discussions about that. I just don't see any difference. I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, the MSA are the ones who required the NDAs, correct?
That's correct.
It wasn't us, right? So, you know, we still, even if we acknowledge that they should sign NDAs, we still have to go to MSA to figure out whether they will accept that or not,
Oh,
correct?
no, the MSA is leaving that
Up to us?
between us and Frank, or if the MSA was to be included, it could be a three-way, but MSA is not requiring they be part of an NDA.
Okay, okay. So, again, I view this project no differently than I viewed North Point. You know, it's a project for the betterment of our community and our city, and I believe that everybody should have access to the information before a decision is made, whether or not a project is feasible, you know, before it's presented to the public and they have all the information also, the same way that everybody else would.
Yeah,
Whether or not it's a feasible project.
I mean,
I think I might add one thing. We do have feasibility, you know, we have facility standards in our league. So I think it's important, before we go too far down the road, to make sure that we're talking about apples to apples. I think that's important. The South Atlantic League actually has a little less facility standards than we do. So I want to make sure that you know, if we are going to use public funds, and they definitely are, and you're right, Councilman, it is a public-private joint venture. You know, you want to make sure that what we're looking at is meets the Atlantic League standards. They're not too different, but I want to make sure they are before we get too far down the road.
Yeah, I would only add to that, guys, I think it goes back to what Mr. Bolton said there in regards to Councilman Roshar, what is the definition of complete? I don't think, no one is, just to be clear, no one is insinuating or asking the public will not have an opportunity to view this document. No one is asking that the public wouldn't be a part of that. The ask is that the Atlantic would be a part of the development, as this is still in a draft status, and they're still working through the draft. So it's not complete until it's complete. And this new entity is involved here that was not involved at the beginning when we set out this process. This process was set out with Affiliated Baseball, Bruce Quinn, the South Atlantic League, and all that has changed. As Mr. Bolton said, we want to make sure that this is compatible to what the Atlantic League brings and would be compatible to the investment, again, that Mr. Bowen is willing to make in our community. So that's all it is.
All right, so the ask is to add Mr. Bolton and Mr. Bowen onto the non-disclosure agreement. So can we just go down the line, yes, no?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind commenting. I would only say to the fellow members of council here, beyond, the representation that information, will not travel any further. At minimum, you should, the body, meaning the mayor and council, and in my opinion, the county commissioners should see at the same time. And I would only caution that as much as you're being indicated to that you're not going to be, involved now. I just named 8 items. And so at the end of the day, folks look at it, come back, say the state money comes through, all you got to do is give on any number of those items. And you got to make a decision with some immediacy without any heads up, so to speak, that deliberation has generally already occurred, and that has a price tag to it. I sent you that in an email. I don't feel that I'm real far off. And so at minimum, you should be sort of seeing that process, just like we did with North Point, unfold in real time with those parties of those evaluations through that process. There is no good, in my opinion, that can come from extending that NDA to other private parties without the elected bodies upon which those decisions will fall, not having an equal sort of period of view and analysis of it and readiness when those discussions do occur, just like North Point, and then need to be introduced to the public. I don't want to be at the end of that deliberation of those private parties to say, hey, yeah, we got it all figured out, we just need you to do these things, and then you end up being the bad person because you say, wait a second, I didn't have any deliberation process on these things. And so that's about as far as I would bend. I don't see any reason the public can't see this document that the public paid for at the same time everybody else gets to see it.
And again, no one is insinuating that the public will not have an ability to see this product. The ask again is to allow the entity who would be the primary tenant, potentially of the facility, to be involved in that process.
Right.
Let
One of the
me ask you
tenants,
something
not
here,
the
Mr.
owner, one of the tenants,
Hold on, would be the primary tenant.
not the owner.
I know you're very fond of, and I support with you, the possible construction of an indoor turf facility. If we're going through and constructing an indoor turf facility, and we're in the middle of an analysis to have an indoor turf facility constructed, and there is entity A, who is going to be potentially the primary tenant of that facility, and that facility is currently designed to have one field within it. But that entity goes away, goes bankrupt, disappears. We're in the middle of this study, or it's coming towards the end of completion. Now entity B comes in and says, hey, I want to be involved in this, but this may need 2 fields, 3 fields. We don't know what it may or may not need. Would you not want them to be involved in the process?
Yes, they should be. Okay.
I
Listen,
just have a quick question, just out of curiosity. Do you know a time frame that we're looking at? So you go into a non-disclosure, you take a look at this study. When are we going to get it? Or when is it going to be released? Not just us, I mean, just released in general. Like, does anyone know a time frame on this?
I don't have a specific time frame. I don't know if Scott can speak to that more, because I know he's spoken to the stadium authority. My general understanding is, they're near the completion of their draft analysis. And then that, but again, we've been told that for, just as you have been, Madam Mayor, for the last better part of 6 months. So I would be hopeful that it would be in a matter of, short time, but I don't think anyone can give a definitive answer unless that's asked directly to the stadium authority, unless Scott knows something different.
I've not gotten any information what the additional length of time would be to include another concept.
Okay, I'm fine with them signing an NDA and being able to see the information that they have right now. That's
Councilmember Burnett, Councilmember Martinez.
I'm fine with them seeing the NDA, I'm fine.
I'm fine with the request only.
All right. So we'll add.
We'll get-
Mr. Bolton and Mr. Bowen. And then
MSA has sent up a sample NDA that we can get legal looking at and get something over to them probably this week.
Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it as always.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right. Up next, we have preliminary agenda review. Stop me if you have any questions. So next week, February 23rd at 7 o'clock, we'll have a call to order, the invocation, pledge to the flag, the announcements. Our meeting schedule for March will be Tuesday, the 2nd and the 9th and the 16th, work sessions at 4 p.m. The 23rd, regular session at 7 p.m., no meeting on the 30th. We'll take citizen comments. You email them up until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 23rd, to councilcomments@hagerstownmd.org. We'll have a public hearing on the Land Management Code amendments, approval of the minutes. The consent agenda is as follows: the Department of Community and Economic Development, open container law exemption, approval of street closures for BISPA Do What Moves You Festival. For Parks and Engineering, we have the Marsh Run Trail for CXS review fees. Public Works, Ground Services, Advantage Landscape and Construction for $30,171.69. Under Utilities, we have maintenance agreements, Pack Company of $12,657, and a grinder pump replacement program for $29,453.74. We have no unfinished business. Under New Business, we have an introduction of an ordinance for the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan, Amendment 12 to the plan, introduction of an ordinance, deed and easement agreement with Richard and Mary Manspeaker for future sidewalk construction, approval of a resolution for an amendment to comprehensive settlement agreement and mutual release with Cascades Holding U.S., Inc., approval of a resolution for a lease agreement with GB&J's LLC, approval of a resolution amending the consolidated general service agreement between the City of Hagerstown and Board of County Commissioners, approval of a resolution, execution of a residential lease agreement for the City of Hagerstown property located at 38 North Potomac Street, apartment number 4. Memorandum of agreement for residential stormwater incentives program with WCSD. Approval of the annual financial and single audit contract for 3 years. Approval of fiscal year 21 general fund budget adjustments. Approval of the citywide mowing contract for March 15, 21 to December 15, 21. Columbia Gas cross-bore investigation of city sewers. Approval of application and guidelines for use of University Plaza. Approval of amendments to fiscal year 21 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. And approval of funding requests for a second allocation of CDBG CV funds. City Administrator comments, Mayor Council comments, and then we'll adjourn. Any questions? All right. Next, we have the proposal to use municipal stadium. Rodney Tissue and Travis Poole.
Good afternoon. I know many of you know Travis. Travis has been in this room many times before. Today he's representing a group that calls themselves the Municipal Baseball Group to use the municipal stadium. So after our discussion in January, where what I understood the decision to be is that we would allow groups to use the facility for 2021 with a long-term plan of putting out an RFP for an indoor turf facility. After we had that discussion, I had several different groups contact me, and to manage all that, I basically asked them all to get together and put together a proposal on how they could work together to use the facility this summer. So the proposal you have represents, if I counted right, over 40 teams that are interested in playing there from all around the region, high school, youth, college, traveling teams, different things like that. So I'll let Travis kind of explain what the proposal is all about, and then I'll talk a little bit about the financial end of it. So Travis.
Thank you, Ronnie. And thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'll be brief because I think it would be more useful to allow you to ask the questions you may have of this proposal than for me to drone on. But as Rodney indicated, this is an association of groups, if you will, the municipal baseball group, and we weren't real creative in tasking the name. It fit, so that's what we ended up with. But it is an association of organizations who are interested in using and essentially operating the municipal stadium. As you well know, there's nothing happening there now, but it is, by and large, the best baseball surface for a full-size field in this county. And there's really no question about that. What do I mean by that? Well, in terms of youth baseball, ages 13 through 18 all play on a full-size field that is comparable to the dimensions of Municipal Stadium. Tack onto that adult baseball, which plays on a full-size field. The Hagerstown Braves, again, adult baseball, college, and some other groups who all use full-size fields. And we start to run out of full-size fields in the area to use. You may notice that the only identifiable full-size baseball fields in the county that I'm aware of belong to the high schools. Each high school has a full-size baseball field and compete at that level. But there are many other teams outside of those high school teams that are looking for places to play, that need fields to run tournaments, to have practice, to have training facilities. And that's why we've, as Rodney indicated, we've been in touch with at least 30 or 40 groups who are extremely interested. I'll note that one of those groups happens to be the Washington County Public School System. We do have great interest from the high schools in playing there, and it would be our intention that in the spring season that primarily it would be used for that purpose. And I can think of nothing else better than giving those high school baseball players who were robbed of a season in 2020 because of COVID the opportunity to play on a Friday night under the lights. In terms of opportunities, not only would they get that opportunity, but you have the ability to put on special events like an all-star game, like a north-south game. I would draw that comparison to the football game. I don't know that we would get the attendance that a football game gets in Hagerstown, but we'd certainly like to try. In the summer season, as it breaks down in our proposal, ideally that would be the season most heavily used by travel baseball, adult baseball teams, and of course the Hagerstown Braves. And sitting behind me is Mike Kipe, who is the manager of the Hagerstown Braves. Also with me today is Jim Kirshner, who has spearheaded this discussion with Rodney and the city in some meetings leading up to today. We have exceptional buy-in from the folks around the table who have essentially asked me to come here today and present this. They're really excited about this opportunity. And I call it an opportunity because we all know that certainly the city may not find this to be an appropriate use of the stadium or may not otherwise like our proposal. And if that happens, then all that really occurs is what occurred last year, and that's that the stadium sits dormant. We're looking at an opportunity to provide a place for all of these groups to play and to utilize what is now an underutilized public facility. We are very aware that we are not the long-term plan. It's not presented to you in that way at all. We are more like what you would call a standby user. Here is a field, here is a facility. It's a wonderful facility. It just needs to be used. And we've proposed it in such a way as to try to minimize the financial impact on the city. We're not asking the city for a loan. We're not asking the city to foot the bill. We're really asking the city to pay what it would otherwise pay if the stadium were to sit empty and vacant for the season we've proposed. The proposed rent that we have in our proposal to you today would cover the utilities, which are the expenses that we increase by using the facility, electric and water. And as our discussion with Rodney unfolded, we found out just how much they would increase if we were using it. He was able to share some of that information with us. We're not looking for the city to maintain the field surface. That would be managed by the group. Most importantly, the group would manage the scheduling and would collaborate with the city on those events that are scheduled at the stadium. We certainly understand that it is a possibility and an opportunity for events such as non-baseball activities to operate there. I know there was talk of perhaps a Maryland Symphony Orchestra
Potentially.
Concert or perhaps other musical venues. And I think if there's a reasonable and logistical way to avoid damaging the field, we certainly are open to all of those possibilities. And in light of the current circumstances where, although some progress has been made, COVID is still a real part of our everyday life, having a large open-air facility makes a lot of sense for some of those activities. You'll see in my proposal, it was sort of an off-the-cuff thought I had while writing it, but you'll see in my proposal that you have this large parking lot area and you have this large stadium area and you have a safe and organized place to do neighborhood events, community events. It's sitting empty right now. You could drive through it and you wouldn't run into anything except a pile of snow. We're proposing to make use of it for approximately 7 months out of 2021 at a rent of $3,000 per month, which is what we approximate will cover the utility costs to operate the stadium. We do intend to use the lights. We are asking that the lights be part of this proposal because it is one of the few full-size fields around with lights. And the opportunities to bring high school games at night, to play tournaments, to have adult games at night are endless with a facility like this. This is not a commercial enterprise on our behalf. We're not looking to do this to make money. We certainly would like to recoup as many costs as we can to afford whatever costs may be incurred to use the stadium. And that means perhaps charging gate admission. There will be no concessions and no sale of alcohol, but there is the possibility of contracting with food trucks or other services to provide food. We think that the end of this is open. We're presenting it in as much as we can define it right now because we don't know how many people beyond those we've talked to are going to be interested if they find out this is a go. We think we could very well double the interest we have now, and that's a good thing for the city. It's a good thing for the community. It will draw people in that wouldn't otherwise be here. And we think it is an excellent use of a facility that will otherwise sit dormant for yet another season. And with that, I will rely mostly on the proposal I submitted to the council members and the mayor and take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just quickly echo what Travis said about making assumptions. I listed some of the ones that we're thinking about. If we want this to happen, we can make this happen with some sort of an agreement with them, but we are making a lot of assumptions. I do feel that their rent would cover the cost of utilities, hauling away the trash, those kind of things. The things I'm most nervous about, to be honest with you, is any repairs we have to make, like irrigation systems, the field lights, things like that. They're not cheap, and we would have some costs incurred there. On the flip side of that, though, is we have costs there if they're not there, and that's mowing the grass and other basic utilities, lights and things like that. So in the end, I think this isn't an unfair proposal. I think it's, it does bring use to the facility if that's what we want to do. And again, it's not a long-term plan. I don't think it's a sustainable long-term plan. The facility needs investment in it far beyond what we're talking about here for the long term. But I think it's a reasonable proposal for 2021.
I concur.
Rodney, have you had any other organizations reach out to do something similar, or?
Baseball related or not?
Either.
Everybody that was interested in baseball,
Oh, you just directed?
I directed them to join in with this group
Okay.
and help facilitate that.
Okay.
We've had a couple different entities suggest that they'd like to maybe have a concert there, depending on where we're at with COVID later this year. The Maryland Symphony is looking for a place, that he alluded to, the Maryland Symphony is looking for a place around July 4th because they can't perform down at Antietam for the next few years because of renovations that are happening down there. So they're looking for a place. So who knows if that'll happen, but that's probably the total of all the inquiries I got.
And Travis, I just have one other question. Have you thought about any kind of security as far as during the games, or I don't see that listed in the proposal?
No, it's a good question.
It's a really good question.
We have not covered whether or not we need security, and my recollection of high school baseball is there is not a resource officer or police officer present at those games like there may be at a football game. I don't know that it's necessary unless we're told that traffic control or some other issue that I haven't thought of comes up. Typically speaking, we're talking about, if we're using the stadium, we're probably having a baseball game at 7 o'clock at night under the lights. And, you know, folks are coming to that game just as they would a high school basketball game at Williamsport or North or South. So we didn't, other than locking it, of course, when we're not there, we hadn't considered whether there would be a need for security or police officers there. If that's something the city would require, certainly we would.
Why do you think security is an issue, or should be looked at?
I don't know. Tensions are high. I don't know. Something.
What?
Tensions are high. I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking the question. I mean, it can get, I know that in some kind of, basketball games, it can get, I think that they have someone that's there and during high school. I don't know about these other, I just wondered if you had considered it, thought about it.
I do have to admit, of all the high school baseball games I've attended in my lifetime, I've never seen security at one of them yet.
Okay.
Now, basketball's a different story.
Yeah.
I remember years ago even, my dad would work overtime at basketball games. I know that's a reality. You're in a closed space, you're right, things get heated sometimes, so baseball, not so, baseball's a pretty calm sport.
Well, and I think that concerts.
Unless pitcher tries to hit a batter.
You never went to a game my son played in.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that was your
seriously.
son, buddy.
The one thing that is different about this is that instead of it being a South baseball field, anybody can walk up to it and watch the game. It's not contained. So I do understand this is contained. So you have people coming in just as you would in a basketball gym, although they'll have to spread out. Other than having staff there from the user groups on sort of a revolving schedule for events to make sure that policies and rules are being complied with, I don't know that law enforcement security had crossed our path in terms of, it's a good question though. I would say that we're flexible, okay? We're proposing this idea with the idea that we get this discussion with the city and that we make something happen. I'm not saying we want to give away the store necessarily, but we are flexible. If the city is requiring that we do something, we can look into that.
I mean, I'm okay with it. I just, like Rodney, you've all alluded to, I'm not interested in and this is the long-term solution. So as long as that is perfectly clear.
So this term looks like April 1st through October 31st.
Yeah.
Of this year only. For
Right,
now.
7 months.
Yeah.
I like it.
I mean, I think it's better than sitting vacant.
I do too.
Yeah, sitting big and collaboration. I like that there's a collaboration with, the high schools and then I like that. I think that's who we are, is a city that can collaborate.
believe having people in that facility at certain times will help to mitigate the damage that could come from vandalism and things like that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm fine with it also.
Kristen?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll put together an agreement, and we'll bring that back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rodney, it's still you, the urban improvement project update.
I just wanted to give you a kind of a brief update on the UIP. Things are moving forward on the project that would construct the plaza behind the Maryland Theater, and also completion of the cultural trail between Antietam Street and Washington Street. There's a lot of moving parts on this project, between the grants, acquiring the land, and all the different approvals that we need to get, but we've been working on this for a while, and it feels like everything is starting to come together for possible construction this summer. So just briefly, on the funding side, I put the proposed budget in the memo. I would say the worst-case scenario is that this project will be 80% grant funded. And if we don't need to use the city funds, if the bids come in favorably, those would be the first things that we would not use, and this project could potentially be higher than 80% grant funded. So it's very attractive from that standpoint. On the land acquisitions, we've had 3 different issues that we've been working on. Of course, you know about the Hager 5 acquisition of the property at 4347 West Washington Street. We have a signed purchase agreement with them to acquire the land from them. I just wanted to note that part of that property requirement of the Historic District Commission is that the facade wall be built out on Washington Street to close the missing tooth of where the building was removed, and that design is attached. So basically, to enter the cultural trail, you'll walk through the right-hand side where the, if you look at the picture in the packet, the trail will be there, and then you'll continue on to the south. So Hager 5 seems like it's moving along good. We're just working on some last conditions of closing that are in the agreement. The district court issue is, if you can imagine district court on Antietam Street, there is a grass strip to the west of it that is a paper alley from back when Hagerstown was originally drawn up by somebody as a lots and subdivision of land. And we've been working with them for over 2 years to
Since
divide.
1868, probably, right?
Right, to divide up that land, and it feels like we're finally making progress with the state, and we should have those documents to us soon that we can bring back to you for approval. But basically, we would use half of that grass strip for the cultural trail. They would keep the half closest to the building. It seems like a common sense thing to do, but it's taken a long time to work through all the details. And then, of course, behind 33 West Washington Street, the county building, where the paved parking lot is, that area will be the plaza. And because of that, we have an agreement now with the county to basically for them to give us an easement over their land to allow this plaza to occur, for us to construct it, and to allow the use of that. And they've approved that at their meeting last week, the county commissioners, so that looks like that's moving forward too. So then on the schedule, there's many things I need to bring to this body over the next few months, and I've listed some of them in there. I guess a couple of the important milestones I wanted to point out is we're going to try to bid this next week and bring the bids back in April. So in April, we'd be bringing all the purchases and the contracts back to you. And I won't go over all the other things in here that we're working on, but suffice it to say, we're shooting to have construction June through August of this summer, and hopefully done before, assuming school restarts again in September, and the place gets even busier back there. So I just want to give you an update that we are making progress and that things are happening.
Finally.
Finally.
We're good.
Thank you. That's great.
I know this is a little after the fact, and I'm sorry. The false facade, the proposed facade on West Washington Street. I mean, I understand we want to close that gap. I get that, okay. Have we ever thought about maybe modeling that after, like, the Berlin Gate in Basel, Germany, that, a sister city?
I think the direction that we were given is that it had to kind of represent the building that was there.
Can we paint a mural on it?
Well, I think there's definitely room for murals in that area, inside that
Just that I
space.
just thought that'd look pretty cool to, you know, replicate that there, and since it's our sister city, but. All right, well, we know the Berlin Gate wasn't there. It took time.
You guys have any questions about
No,
where we're at?
it's awesome.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
And
And then we have the summer camp grant program.
Okay, so for I think like the last almost 30 years, the city has taken and put some money in our Parks and Recreation budget, and that money has been given to different nonprofits to operate summer camps. I think historically it started with the YMCA. Over time, Robert Wood Johnson was added, and the Girls Inc. was added. And up until now, we really haven't had any type of process for reviewing proposals that come in from them. Basically, those three applied, and we gave them the money. We do know, though, there's other agencies out there, at least two others, that have contacted us about, hey, how do we get to be part of this program? And in reality, what it is it's basically a grant program that we manage. In the budget, there's $75,000, and it represents about 25% of our overall recreation budget in the city. So we as staff, Mark, Amy, and I felt like we really had to put together some sort of a proposal that, for you to review, that basically is a policy on how we're going to manage this grant program. So briefly, I'll just walk you through that. We put together what we think is the mission of this program. And I don't know how it got started 30 years ago, or why, or what the mission was then. But we think what would be important is that it's a safe, fun, supportive environments for kids where they're challenged with different experiences. I think they learn from positive role models, which is maybe as important as anything, and have the opportunity to develop social, emotional, and physical skills at the camps. To be eligible for these funds, we said you had to be a nonprofit, that the money was used for camp scholarships only and not any other part of your operation, and that we would allow $250 per child per season. The application process, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. Basically, it's a 3-page submittal with the various information that we've outlined in the memo that they would give us. But then the hard part is, how do we select the different nonprofits to be awarded the funds? So we put together these 7 criteria. We wanted to see a nonprofit that had previous experience and the ability to run a camp. We think that the history of this is that they utilized our parks, which I still think is a good criteria to use. The third one is that they have to have a good way to recruit city kids to be part of the camp. The fourth is that they need to submit a budget on what their costs are, what funding they're asking for, and how they're going to use those funds. We want to see that they're providing diverse activities for the kids, hiking, hopefully swimming at our pool, educational field trip opportunities. We're saying that the program has to run at least 7 weeks, June through August timeframe, has to be Monday through Friday, and has to operate at least 6 hours a day. And we'd also want to get a written security and safety plan from them. So we put together a matrix that we're going to score these out, and with your approval, we'll send this out to everyone for them to submit back. I don't know how this is all going to work out, I'll be honest with you. I think we're going to get $150,000 worth of requests for our $75,000, but then we're going to score it out, and then we'll make a recommendation to you. So that was our attempt to put together a program. I'm more than happy to take your feedback.
I think it's very fair.
I do too. I directed summer camp at the Robert W. Johnson Community Center for 3 years, so
Yeah.
the money that came from the city was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's great that there's been in place.
I'm good.
I like that other people are interested in it, you know, that,
Yeah.
this is a big thing to find out where your kid's gonna go for summer camp, and to be
Right.
able to have someone, an ability to pay for it, and other opportunities, like the other two
Right.
organizations.
And that's something I should point out too, is we think that it's a good idea if the families could pay at least $10 a week. So, like the YMCA I know gives free camps, but Girls Inc. I know, they charge, Robert Wood Johnson I think charges some too.
$10 a week.
I think for them to have some skin in the game is a good thing, and so we're asking if they can propose that as well, so it's not completely free.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Sounds good.
What's
Sounds
the timeframe for submitting the application? 'Cause I know that, I'm pretty sure they're already in planning phase now.
Yeah, I'm already behind. I'd like for you all to approve this next Tuesday, then we have a policy on how we're gonna do it. Next Wednesday, I'm gonna send them out to the camps and hopefully get it back from them 3 or 4 weeks, so that we approve these late March, early April in a special session or something, so that they can make their plans. But we are running a little late, I have to admit that.
Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you. And we have the North Locust Street Fairground Avenue traffic signal.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. You don't even have to read it. Get out of here.
My best presentation is when I don't say anything.
Done. Absolutely.
It's the right thing to do.
I've sent Bob like 10 pictures in the past couple of weeks. I'm like, get it out of here. Just get that light out of here, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right,
If I may, Madam Mayor, one other quick thing I'd like to have on the agenda for next week, and I apologize about the late notice, but we'd like to adjust some of the fees in Parks and Recreation for the upcoming season. Typically, this would be in your budget book, and you would approve it, and it would go into effect July 1st. But for Parks and Rec, that's not really a good timing of when these things would go into place. So these are basically cost of living adjustments to our fees at the pool, at the train, at the Hager House, and then renting pavilions and renting the band shell in City Park, which is the one we increased the most because we think that one was underpriced. But basically, we're asking if you could approve these at this voting session in February, and then they would go into effect at the start of the season. Most of these have not been increased in between 5 and 10 years. But one of the main reasons we're doing this is because minimum wage increases affect all these facilities, especially the pool, and we have to be ready for that.
It's just a trickle down. Always a trickle down.
I mean, I think this looks reasonable. Do you guys have any, quick questions while he's here? Joe?
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
for adding that.
I like that the pool stays the same for the kids under.
All right, Kitty Clark, we have approval of a new residential lease for 3640 North Potomac Street, Unit 4.
Hi all, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great, so, yes, just gonna give you the quick update on how that leasing is going forward. As you know, last November, you directed us to advertise the apartment and to find an artist tenant. So that's, even though the building is currently listed on the CNS program and the engine room is not currently operational, we received some applications, staff reviewed them, and then the Artist Review and Selection Advisory Group interviewed the candidates and reviewed portfolios. And the tenant that we are recommending for the apartment is Alexandra Burt. She's a costume design artist. The lease term would begin April 1st, and the total amount of the lease is for $5,400. And upon your approval, which is on next week's regular session, the lease, which was drafted by Jason Morton, would be signed by the tenant. So that's what I got there. If you have questions.
You guys good with that?
I'm good.
Good?
Awesome.
Well, that was easy.
That was easy.
The street closure request for BISPA.
Yep, and I have Mimi Dickinson here with me from the BISPA Foundation. just I'll just do a little quick summary and then hand it over to Mimi to add whatever she wants to add. The Barbara Ingram School is planning a Do It Moves You Festival to take place in May. And because this is a new event that requests a street closure, we need approval by the mayor and council. The specific request is to close the unit block of South Potomac between Washington and Antietam Streets from 3 to 10 p.m. on May 14th with a May 21st rain date. And so I'll ask Mimi to say a bit more about the actual event.
Can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm so used to being on mute. Thank you all. We are super excited to be able to try to get everybody together and do something to honor our students and the community and downtown. And so 3 teachers actually came together and came up with this idea. Great tagline, whatever moves you. And we're looking forward to just having all of our disciplines doing some things in front of the school and behind the school. We'd like to incorporate the arts trail if possible, but that will just be an offering. We will not be putting anything on the arts trail at this time. Maybe that will be something in the future. We do hope this might become a annual event for the school. So that's kind of where we're at this point. So we just would like your approval. And we actually have 2 dates. May 14th is the date. May 21st is the rain date. And then if that is rained out, we'll do it in the fall.
And I'll just add that Mimi's already met with the logistics committee, the city's logistics committee, and as we move forward on the event, we'll continue to meet and work out the details.
I'm just excited that we're starting to plan actual events again.
Yeah, really.
Is it good?
Yes, thank goodness.
Good to see you, Mimi. It sounds like a good time.
I'm Mimi,
Wonderful,
I
thank
think
you.
so too. And Kitty, hi Kitty.
Oh, sorry.
You guys good with this? All right, you're good to go.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
guys. Good night. All right, lastly, we have the amendment to police and fire employees retirement plan. Dawn, the floor is yours. Oh, and Amy.
Yeah, Amy's she's having problems with the microphone. So this began several months ago. We were approached by members of the Police Fire Retirement Committee who requested a change for the plan. In the past, police and fire members could retire at 25 years of service or above. With an actuarial calculation, they would get their benefit and go about their happy way. But it was different than the state plan. The state plan allows for credit that is accrued in sick time that you have on the books when you retire. So if I retire at 30 years and I have an actuarial calculation of sick time that's the equivalent of 18 months, they would tack on 18 months to my 30 years, and that would be my calculation. Of course, the maximum is 30 years, so I wouldn't get any more. But in the police pension, that was not happening. So they asked us to make the change, and in doing so, the requirement was that it would be cost neutral to the city. So we asked the actuaries to take a look at that, figure out how much of an increase it would be for the police and fire members of the plan. The calculation was 1%. They currently pay 8% now. And so they were willing to pay 9% for that benefit. So we went back to the attorney that wrote the plan, asked the attorney to place an amendment in the plan, which you have in your packet today. We will be back next week to ask for your approval for that amendment as required by law. Amy, is that you?
Yep.
Did I explain it correctly? I guess not.
Usually that-
Don?
no,
Don?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said, did I explain it correctly? If you didn't hear me, don't worry about
Yes,
it.
you did.
Okay.
Yes, you did.
All right. Are there any questions?
So
Michelle, did you, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Amy, did you have anything you wanted to add? Are there any questions?
No, I think you covered it.
My only question is, with us having the issues that we're having, retaining police officers, is this something that could be reflected negatively? When you compare us to other jurisdictions, we have some plus sides on our retirement plan. Is this something that could be turned into this is another reason maybe I want to go look elsewhere?
Yes, this is, I would say this is a pretty positive benefit for the plan, no doubt about that. It does bring it in line to the state plan. It also brings it in line to the state police plan as well. And certainly the plan that is in place in Frederick County is very, very similar to this as well.
Okay.
The one thing I will add to this is part of a retention is right now, as part of the union contract, any new hires after 2011 would not be paid out any benefit of sick leave. So by offering this sick leave credit, it would be a way for someone to, if they stayed till retirement, didn't abuse the sick leave, they would have a nice little benefit to add to that. So I think the union groups and the committee and stuff looking at it as a retention effort as well.
Okay. Michelle?
The only thing I'll add is because I think I might have heard your question a little differently. Can this be looked at in the opposite direction from the employee? Absolutely can, because we're going to ask them to contribute 9%.
Instead of 8.
Instead of 8. And
Right.
actually, the state of Maryland employees are at 7%. Are other jurisdictions at 9% for public safety? That I don't know. However, this group that we have in this committee has assured us that this is what their union members want. Again, will that change? More than
Sure.
more than likely, given trends, right? But this is one way we could move forward. Again, we need it to be as budget neutral to the city as possible because we have such a large percentage of this pension plan that is unfunded. So it's a richer benefit to the employees. It does not necessarily help us as an organization or as an employer to get a better funded position or percentage, but it helps us to not, with our 14%, that our 14% isn't increasing the benefit and lowering the funded percentage all at one time. That the employees wanted the benefit of the sick leave credit enough, if that makes sense.
It does. So this group, I know there's a group that's outlined in here that meets. So are they the ones that make the decision, or when this was proposed, do they take this to the union to get their vote or opinion?
It does not require a union vote. This is, these folks are made up of union members, obviously.
Yeah.
And their membership gives them feedback and they bring it back as a committee. So ultimately, it's the committee that makes the decision, and then, of course, you make the ultimate decision.
Okay. I just don't want to see any other change that can come back a month from now and say, we're bleeding officers already, and now you guys want more money from us, and this is going to be a reason to leave.
The increase in the cost that is being absorbed by the members was voluntary. They knew it. It was something they really wanted and were willing to pay for.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the clarification. Do you guys have any questions?
No.
You good with the change?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. City Administrator.
Thank you.
Just one thing there. School's back in today. Folks will notice, especially in the city school areas, potentially an increase in traffic around the schools, and that's the main predominant reason for that. Probably two reasons for that is, one, parents are a little leery about putting their kids on a bus, or two, buses are operating, I think, only allowing a maximum of 20 on a bus, when buses could handle upwards of 80, I believe, somewhere around that. So there are a lot of kids that are needing to either walk or be taken to school. So I just ask for folks, especially when you're driving around Bester or Pangbourne or Potomac Heights, those areas, that north and south, because I know there's a significant increase at south today, that you just be aware, be patient, and just if you're looking to pull out or go around someone, just make sure there's not a kid standing there or a car moving out. We have another winter storm approaching for Wednesday night into Thursday. Just try to, we'll keep posted on social media as to trash collection, parking, those kind of things, but just to be aware of that. And then, Mayor, I don't know if you were going to mention it. If you are, I won't go into it, but as far as the state of the city goes, the mayor and Wes have been working very hard on developing the video for State of the City. That's March 2nd. We'll still need to work out the timing. It's going to be a virtual thing. It's not going to be like we have had in the past. And so those details are yet to be determined, but we are in the throes of putting the State of the City video together. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's you. I don't have anything.
I have nothing.
I have something positive. So yesterday I was on a panel hosted by Jack and Jill of America in Western Maryland chapter, and the focus was on Black politics. And I was also, there was other elected officials from Frederick and Delegate Cham that was on a call, and there were mothers and children that had really good questions about what do we do as a city and what does the government do, and they were really, really inspiring. They had really good questions. They were also the future leaders, so I was really thankful to be on that call, and yeah, thanks. So
Awesome. Thank you. Kristen? All right, I have a couple things. We got a request for a letter of support for the Maryland Heritage Area Programs to support the grant application for the Historical Trust. So just want to make sure you guys are good with that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, and then the second one, we got a request to support Senate Bill 869, which is the support for Western Maryland MARC rail expansion study. So are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, just
Mark?
support,
Yeah, support for the study for it.
Oh,
The
okay.
MARC
Yeah,
extension,
like-
not those things.
Sorry.
All right.
Looked at you like a deer in headlights.
Sorry, I don't think I sent it an email, but, okay, so those were it for the letter of support. The only other thing, actually, I wanted to say this last week, but to piggyback off of what you just said, I've been doing the If I Were a Mayor Zooms with the 4th grade classes in the city of Hagerstown, and they have been doing a lot of research on our administration, and it is so cool when we're talking about history being made this year, and watching the little African-American boys and girls when they talk about you guys, and their faces light up. And the one little girl said, they showed us that anything is possible. And I wanted to share that with you guys because the impact was so cool. And I know it was just incredibly inspiring. And lastly, thank you to all the teachers for today. I'm sure today was very difficult. But on behalf of all of us who have been quarantined with teenagers for the last year, thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, you guys have a good night. We're adjourned.